Hey everyone, back with another video, and this time I thought it would be interesting to talk about a saber that I actually didn't intend on buying or making a review of. And that would be this here InMotu old school training saber M2 curved. Before we get to that though, formalities out of the way as per usual. First and foremost, I paid for this with my own money and there was no talk about any kind of review. I really just got this for personal use. Then, one thing that you need to keep in mind with this particular piece is that it is a bit of a composite, because all the stuff that Paul does is modular. So I already had the guard and pommel from another piece, well, more technically from the M2 non-curve that I reviewed in the past. So I just got the grip, because I didn't have that before, and I got the blade. So there might be some differences to it, because Paul now offers a light and a heavy guard. So generally speaking though, that shouldn't do too much regarding the points that I want to bring up, other than the very exact nature of the stats. But I think it's still representative of what you're getting. Other than that, the structure of the video will be the same as always, meaning that there will be my talking part now. Then after that, I will go over the ordering process, why I got it, stats, then just general impressions, things I like, I maybe didn't like, and hopefully we'll come to a satisfying conclusion. And then there will be pictures of the stats again, so you can pause and look at those in detail. Some more pictures of the blade. There will be no fencing footage, because I've already made a video on that, but I'll link to it. And there will also be timestamps to all of the stuff that is in the video down in the description. Okay? So, let's get on with it then. Ordering process, that one will be short, because it was a pleasantly unremarkable experience. The pieces were in stock, I just added them to the cart and yeah, paid, got an update when they were shipped, received them, nicely packed, all is well. As I said, pleasantly unremarkable. What I got was a basically not quite Olympic, but still rather late training saber with a blade that is very modern looking, but as I said, still curved. So for me at least, I know there's other definitions out there, still identifiable as a saber. Looking at the stats, this is overall 104 centimeters long. Not a particularly short saber, really. Of that, 87.5 centimeters is the blade. The point of balance, with this one here at least, is at round about 4 centimeters in this configuration here. And it weighs in at about 640 grams. I mention that at this point because with the black grip you do get a lead weight that fits in a slot in the hilt, specifically made for it, and that adds another 30 grams, so you can configure it a bit to your liking. If you put that in, then you have a weight of around about 670 grams, and the POB slides a bit more into the grip, and then it balances at about 3.3-ish centimeters. Not a lot, but noticeable, especially from the feeling in the grip. Personally, I have it out most of the time, not only so that I can show you, but also from personal preference. Looking more into the basket, as I said, that one is the one that I already had. I'm not quite sure if this is closer to the light or heavy version, or if it's somewhere in between. It's 2mm steel, that would be the heavier version from what I see on Paul's website. Quite durable really, nice form, not too big, but big enough to protect your hand. And has already survived quite a number of bouts. There's some dings to it, held up just great so far, really. It's about 11 centimeters wide. That's it for that one. More interesting, and why I actually got it, to me is the blade. And what I like about it is that I would say it's one blade where it really shows that there was a lot of thought put into it. So looking at the taper, we have a width of 12 millimeters at the base. Then when we go to the point of balance, it already slims down to 10. When we go to the middle of the blade, we get to 6 millimeters. And then at the point before the rounded tip, or the rolled tip more specifically, it's 5 millimeters, and also the tip is 5 millimeters. Distal taper is 7 millimeters at the guard, and then at the point of balance it's still 7 millimeters. It's 4 when we go to the middle of the blade, and then it's 2 millimeters just before the rolled tip, and then 6 millimeters of it when you have the rolled tip. It's nice and flexible in the foil, and it does have a rather substantial and quite sturdy fort, which I like. Just naming the stats in that case doesn't really do it justice, I think. But if you like, if you're into blade geometry, I think, and you have this in hand, you will notice, really. I'm not the biggest fan of rolled tips in general, I have to say, but with this one I'm kind of okay because it's on the tighter end of the rolled ones and the edges are also somewhat rounded. So still not the biggest fan, but yeah, this one kind of okay with that one. Also because it is quite flexible, there's less of a chance really of it breaking in any way. This is a lighter blade, but I would like to stress that light and agile doesn't need to translate to frail, because this one has quite a sturdy feel to it, and from my experience so far, I do not think it will have a problem holding up against heavier blades, really. That is a nice fort to parry with. The other thing I wanted to look at specifically is the grip. It's 3D printed and new on offer. It's a bit hard to measure because, as you can see, it kind of has these divots for your hand to grip into. So it depends a bit on where you measure, but generally just trying to start, middle and end. If you go for the width of the grip, then we have basically a 27 millimeters, and then it's 28 in the middle about-ish, and then it's 34 at the pommel. And if you go for the thickness of it, then it's 24 and 22 and then 30 millimeters. As I said, kind of hard to measure because of the form of it. So it depends on where you look. But from the tendency, it's basically generally thicker towards the pommel and a bit of a slight waisted design, with again the biggest part being at the pommel. Overall, I would say comfortable to grip and a nice design. So nice for that. I do have some remarks on it though. Leading with that, maybe just so much for the stats. Why did I actually get it? Well, I just found it interesting because I had the non-curved version, and while it isn't really my cup of tea, it isn't quite what I'm looking for Hutton, I'm always looking for affordable sabers that I can recommend to my students, and this one is on the more affordable end, so I couldn't really resist in the end getting it too, even though I was actually more interested in the M1 that I will also be reviewing. Then looking at it, things I noticed, things I liked, maybe things I didn't like. Overall, as I said, a light blade, an agile blade, but one that I say isn't frail. Substantial fort that is nice in parrying. A lot of thought has been put into the geometry of it, and that shows, as I said. It's fun fencing with it. You can be quite fast. You can really go for kind of endurance training more than strength, really. That can be nice for longer drilling as well. If you have people that maybe are not quite there yet, that are new to your club, that are still working on their strength and endurance, this is nice to have, because it's not really good if you have a heavier saber that maybe fits what you do better if your people can't really use it for longer than 5 minutes. That is what I have used this for in my club, and I have used it myself if I wanted to do more of speed training for example. For that it was definitely nice. The blade has held up great. The grip, that was the other part, what I wanted to look at. In general, I would say nice and comfortable form. But if I would have one remark on what might be improved, or what could be improved from my perspective at least, I would say, since what I do in Hutton, or any saber really mostly that I fence, is put the thumb on the back of the grip, it would be nice to have a flatter area where the thumb goes, because if you look at the structure of it, the lines from the printing go along or horizontally, basically, which means that it is rather easy to slip from the edge with your thumb. It is less of a problem with this lighter saber here. It's a bit more of a problem with the M2, but we'll get to that when I actually do the review of that. Now, I have been using the straight blade, straight version of the M2 with this grip in the past. And this is one that is like specifically fashioned after grips used for the student dueling in the German-speaking area of Europe. And some others, I think. This one is specifically made for the thumb grip, and it's very ergonomically for that, and not really of much use for anything else. It wouldn't need to be that, really. That is not what I would be asking for, but just a bit more, really. If you don't really put the thumb on the back, then this won't concern you. It is a comfortable grip in general, just from the feel of it, but from someone who uses the thumb grip, that is what I would maybe recommend for looking into. Overall, looking at the conclusion here, this is a nice saber. I really actually quite like it. I liked it more than I thought I would. I got it more out of curiosity, really. But while it isn't what I'm looking for Hutton, I would like it to be a little heavier for that, a little more substantial, really. I wouldn't have a problem if any one of my students would get this for Hutton. It still works for Hutton quite well, really. And it is a nice saber to fence with. If you are looking for something that fits a very late HEMA source, this might just be the ideal saber form. It might just be what the source was actually written for, something that so far had been very hard, if not impossible, to get. For later type sources, this could just be ideal. For Hutton, it is still very good, not ideal, but still very good, really. And it is fun to fence with. If you are looking for something that you can use yourself for speed training, this could be very well worth looking into. If you are looking something that you could have for people who are still training, that are still getting there with their endurance and strength, newer students, then this could also be worth looking into, really. Because it just allows for longer drilling of technique and allows people to develop the endurance and strength. Overall, a nice saber, really. It is not exactly my cup of tea, but I do appreciate it. So, thumbs up from me. Cheers.